Welcome to Cyber Survivor. I'm the host, Dan Dotson, and today I'm joined by my friend, Scott Augenbaum, former FBI and cyber guru. Scott, welcome to the pod.
Thanks, Dan. I know it's been a while. We've been playing phone tag for so long, and it's so cool to be here. What a great studio you have.
Oh, thank you so much. You have no doubt been the hardest guest to get, but I'm super excited about this, and I know you can share lots of expertise. So before we dive in, give the audience a little bit about your background and what you've done in your career, because it's fascinating.
Sure. I am a retired FBI agent. I started the FBI when I was 20 years old, 1988, out of New York City, just because my mom, raised by a single mom in New York City, she filled out an application for me when I got done with community college with my 2.27 grade point average. And the world wasn't knocking down my door with opportunities, but because my mom filled out an application for me to be a file clerk with the FBI, this is how this whole journey started.
Wow.
And, we all say we're parents, right?
Yeah.
We have to teach our kids to do things on their own. Don't do everything for your kids. But if my mom didn't do that, I have no idea where I'd be. Spent 6 years in the New York City field office as a file clerk, doing as a clerical employee. I got my first office of assignment to Syracuse, New York in 1995. And in 1997, cybercrime was in its infancy. And since I had advanced computer skills in 1997, I became the cyber guy. You want to tell me, Dan, what that might be dating you a little bit, but in 1997, what were advanced computer skills?
I have no idea. I was going to ask you that question, Scott.
Okay.
What was advanced computer
I knew
skills?
How to use America Online.
The AOL.
I was an expert in networking. And granted the internet was in its infancy at that point in time. And, there were very few FBI agents who had technical skills. And in 1998, the FBI became the lead law enforcement agency for critical infrastructure protection. Realize I'm not talking about cybercrime. I'm talking about infrastructure protection. So I, by default, became the cyber guy in the office, which wasn't a cool and fun, sexy job to have back in 1998 because cybercrime was in its infancy. We were dealing with thrill seekers. We were dealing with amateurs. And then in 1999, cyber took what I'd like to call a very sinister twist because then we started dealing with credit cards online. We started dealing with e-commerce. And so what am I doing? I'm chasing around teenage hackers who were stealing money. You weren't one of those kids.
I was not. I was not. Yeah.
You kind of looked a little familiar.
Yeah. That's not how we met. I appreciate you clarifying that. But no, that's where it all started, right?
And let me just kind of go back to 1999. This is before the Department of Homeland Security. This is before September 11th. I get a call from the National Infrastructure Protection Center, and they call me. It's a Sunday night. It's here we are. It's Syracuse, New York. There's snow on the ground. It's April. And they tell me with a sense of urgency, I have to go up to Potsdam University because there's a young kid trying to gain unauthorized access to the Cape Kennedy Space Center. And they give me one set of instructions. Neutralize the threat. What does that mean to you, neutralize the threat? What do you think it?
Well, my knee jerk was take him out,
Yeah, but, okay. So,
kid in a college dorm room, I think maybe get his computer. I don't know.
Well, let me tell you, here I am. I'm running and gunning, at the FBI, get a chance to work bank robberies, fugitives, drug cases, working on really crazy stuff. I didn't join the FBI to go knock down the door of a college kid in feet pajamas who's almost in tears going, I'm sorry. And I always have to tell that story. And that kid tracked me down later on in life. He actually heard me speak at a conference, and he goes, hey, I was the guy. He turned out very, very successful in life.
Wow.
I met him in New York City a couple of years ago at a conference. But look where we are now. So let's just go. The events of September 11th changed the trajectory of the FBI in the world forever. Counterterrorism becomes number one. Counterintelligence number two. cybercrime the number 3 priority for the entire FBI. So I take a position at FBI headquarters in 2003 as a supervisor with the newly formed FBI Cyber Division. 22 years ago. More than that, 20. We're almost going on 25 years since the formation of the Cyber Division to deal with this emerging national, transnational threat. And when I took the job, you know what all my friends said to me? You're committing career suicide, Scott. The cybercrime problem is going to go away by 2006, and it's going to be solved by a lot of really smart guys with technology. I want you to process that for a second. What do you think about that?
Yeah, it actually reminds me of a story. When I was going to college, my grandmother bought everybody a laptop. That was their gift. And that was right when Wi-Fi was taken off. And the college I was going to did not have Wi-Fi yet, but it was getting it. And so I'm at the Gateway computer, kiosk in the mall with my grandmother. And she says,
what year is this?
This would have been 2003.
Okay, because I bought my first computer at Gateway in '96. And I spent $2,500 for a 133 megahertz processor. What did you get? Was it something a little more advanced?
A little more advanced, but not much more, right? I mean, it was still, doing Moore's law, but it wasn't advancing like it is with the world of AI. But I'm sitting at this kiosk, and my grandmother says, "You need to get the one with Wi-Fi." And I looked at it, I'll never forget this, looked at it, I said, why would anybody want Wi-Fi? Yeah. My college, Texas Tech doesn't have Wi-Fi, no one's gonna have Wi-Fi. And this was like, you graduate high school in May, this was like June. By the time I went to college in August, Texas Tech was Wi-Fi, and I was the only loser that had to put the card in with the antenna because it wasn't embedded in my laptop, because my grandmother knew more about technology. But
that was only an extra $90.
Yeah, exactly, no, literally. And I was just, and
everyone would go, who needs this? Why do I want this?
That was my attitude. And I reflect on that story a lot, Scott, because it's like, there's elements of both cyber and IT that sometimes we're just naive about, and we don't think about that because it's such a new phenomenon that we haven't experienced yet. Yeah. And so we just don't have the insight or the foresight to think through that.
And that's the problem with today, and we're going to really go into that because I see that as a reoccurring theme in the world of technology, and I hate to say it, in the world of healthcare.
Yeah.
So here we are. So I get down to Washington, D.C., working on a national cyber strategy. I'm traveling around the world. I'm in my infancy. I get to Nashville in 2007 because the FBI at that time goes out. We build a cyber division at FBI headquarters, and the mandate is within the 56 field offices in the United States, we are going to have a dedicated cyber squad in each field division. Now, there were some offices, they had what we called them, these NIPSI squads, National Infrastructure Protection Squads. So you had one in New York, you had one in San Francisco, you had a couple around the country. But now I came out and they're like, okay, go run the cyber squad. Well, there's no playbook on how to run a cyber squad. So what are we doing? We're doing what the FBI has done, unfortunately. This was back in the past. We react. But so the first year we go back, I go, look, we don't have any cyber cases. And they give me a failing grade. They're like, well, what do you mean you don't have cyber cases? How do you know? I was like, well, no one's calling. And that's when I learned I had to be proactive. Yeah. So in 2007, 2008, because everyone goes like this in Nashville, Scott, you know everybody. I'm like, yeah, because part of my job within the FBI was to identify the largest potential targets and build relationships with them before they had a problem. Yeah. And that is really where I spent the majority of time from 2008 until probably 2013, and then the game changed completely. And we're going to go into that. So I retired from the FBI in 2018 on my 50th birthday. I have an amazing 30-year career. And people say, Scott, do you miss the FBI? I go, no. really quickly. And I had an amazing time. I would do it all over again. It was so great. But why do I not miss the FBI? Because today I do what I love to do, which is sharing my experiences with people who will listen and teach them how to avoid becoming the victim of cybercrime. And it's at every single level. So I've been doing that. I've been retired now for almost 8 years. I'm busier than I ever been. I wrote a book called The Secret to Cybersecurity, a simple plan to protect your family and business from cybercrime. If you're looking to read a good book by an FBI agent who saved the day and put a lot of bad guys in jail and it's really technical, I'm not your guy. That's not me, because I'm going to be honest. I've never been the hero in the story.
Yeah.
I've been the guy who's responded to so many different things, and especially in healthcare over the decades. And you know what? And we can rip behind the scenes. I was involved with community health systems in 2014. I want to ask you a question. Would you say it's a really bad day when a company has to pick up the phone, especially a healthcare company, and they have to call the FBI because there's a problem?
Yeah, I think that's a really bad day for the healthcare organization. And I feel like over the last 3 to 5 years, Scott, what I've seen is, the adversarial intent is to disrupt healthcare, primarily to hold them ransom because they're likely to pay. And we've seen massive impacts to clinical care. And I think that as an industry, there's this concern about bringing in outside parties besides legal counsels when you have that event. And I don't know if that's the right way to think about it.
Well, let me just tell you, that's the wrong way to think about it, because you know what? That wasn't my career. Everyone would go, hey, Scott, were you the guys the healthcare companies called when they had a problem? I go, nah. I called them. I told them they had a problem. Stop and process that for a second.
Yeah.
What do you do when a third party calls you and tells you have a problem? Remember, in the world, we all hope that everyone now has their intrusion response plan, because what do? We prepare. We plan. But what do you do when someone else identifies it? And I hate to tell you, I've dealt with Fortune 500 companies. Nobody knows how to react to it until it happens once.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's a horrible experience if you haven't been on the other side. And that's where I kind of worked with companies beforehand, because the best time to figure this out is before you have a problem.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to be exchanging business cards and figuring out process during the event.
Yeah, but you want to know what happened now? Unfortunately, as times have changed, it becomes very, very difficult for certain healthcare companies, because it's all about trust. I was doing this here from 2007 up until today.
Yeah.
I wouldn't talk to the government. It took time to build that relationship. So now I try to take what I've learned, the lessons that I've learned, that people can incorporate into their playbooks to be able to say, hey, look, what do you do in this situation? I mean, I've seen everything. Nothing ever surprises me. And I get calls all the time that I'm like, hey, there's an FBI agent calling me out of Milwaukee who wants to talk to me. And I'm like, well, I never picked up the phone and called people. Called the local office here.
Yeah. That's interesting. So I got a question for you. Why haven't we been able to stop it?
Why haven't we been able to stop it? Because it's an interesting thing. I retired in 2018. That was 7.5 years ago. And there's a great article, I'm going to link it to you, where I am telling the healthcare industry, I'm speaking at a HIMSS conference, and I am telling them, hey, you got to get your crap together in 2015, because there's a storm coming. And you know what that storm is? It's ransomware, it's the business email compromise, it's data breaches. And this is right after the 2014 Community Health Systems incident, when we see the People's Republic of China stealing information. And I'm telling everyone in healthcare that, hey, the cybercrime problem's out of control. It's going to be a $6 trillion problem, according to Cybersecurity Ventures, in 2021. Okay? And they're looking at me like I'm the town crier. Like, why would anybody want to target us? And we're going to talk about that. And here we are, it's a $10 trillion problem, and the problem keeps getting worse year after year after year. And you know what we're doing? We're throwing money at the problem. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we're not throwing money, in my opinion, at the right things. Because if 90% of what I dealt with easily could have been prevented,
So what are the right things that we should be focused on then?
well, yeah, let's kind of really talk about that. But let me just explain to you what I've learned after dealing with 1,000 cybercrime victims. I call this the 4 truths to cybersecurity, because we need to change behavior here. I can list you off the things. There's no secret. I call the book The Secret to Cybersecurity as a joke. There is no secret. The secret is most could be prevented. I deal with 1,000 victims, and I want to unpack this with you. This is what I learned. The first, and you see it too, the first thing is nobody ever expected to be a victim. Why would anyone want to target us? We're only a small business. I once had a $300 million healthcare company tell me they were a small business. What do you think about a $300 million company referring to themselves as a small business?
Yeah, I think if they're comparing themselves to the 8,000 hospitals, they may think that they're on the lower end of it. But if you think about all the businesses across all industries in the U.S., that's certainly at least a medium-sized business.
Listen, we can look at risk and we can do different things, but what happens when you ignore risk?
Right.
So, okay, I've had some of the largest privately held healthcare organizations, some of them are now public, tell me in 2014 they weren't concerned about becoming a cybercrime victim because they were privately held companies. What do you think about that?
Well, I think that changed. I think that has changed a lot since that time. But you're right. Back then, people weren't concerned about it. It was like, they're not going to come after me.
I had companies on the NASDAQ tell me they weren't concerned because they weren't on the New York Stock Exchange. I had a company that was a $5 billion company tell me that they were not concerned. So that's the first truth to cybersecurity. And let me ask you, you're on the cutting edge. You're dealing with healthcare companies. How true is that when you're talking to people? Are they concerned about victimization?
Yeah, I think that that's changed slightly, Scott. I think that people are becoming more aware of that, the risks associated with cyber events. I think there's been enough big cases over the last 3 to 5 years. There's been lots of disruption to patient care. So I think people are more and more aware of it. The bigger challenge that I see is that, yeah, they may be aware of it kind of within IT or within the cyber team that they have, but getting the attention of the organization, getting the board, getting the C-suite to really buy in there and support it, man, that's a broad spectrum across
That's
healthcare.
why my guys who work intrusion response hate when I do talks.
Yeah.
Because they don't, it's the model. It's like, hey, they come in after the fact. So nobody expects to be a victim. The second truth to cybersecurity is when the bad guys steal your stuff, you get hit with ransomware. Even your senior parents get hit with their money is stolen. You contact law enforcement, the chances of law enforcement getting your money back is slim to none, or having a decryptor key and that stuff. So let me ask you, this is another question I get all the time, and I love talking about this that I get. Ransomware, do we pay the ransom or do we not pay the ransom? What do you think?
Oh, wow, that's a challenging question, especially in healthcare.
Well, how about this? I go out and I speak at conferences all the time. What do you think the audience always says to me when I ask that question? Do we pay or do we not pay?
Don't pay.
Of course. When I was with the FBI, I used to tell people we don't pay. There's great reasons why we don't pay. We don't negotiate with bad guys. Sometimes I've had a healthcare company here, paid the ransom on a Monday. They didn't fix the vulnerabilities and they got hit again on a Wednesday. And they were surprised about that. So there's plenty of reasons, but I made a statement in 2006, and this is why that's the wrong answer, because when we deal with ransomware, unfortunately, we're only dealing with availability. Because people say to me all the time, hey, we got great backups in place. And I always kind of flip the switch. Hey, can you tell, I'm not a technical guy, can you explain to me how does backing up your data prevent ransomware? Does it?
No.
No, it doesn't. Because here's what happened in 2016. And I said this at a big healthcare conference, and everybody got pissed off. I said, if you can get hit with ransomware, they can steal your data. And it's a breach. And everyone in healthcare gets hypersensitive. Don't say the B word.
Yeah.
Don't say the B word. That's ransomware today. Today, ransomware is something that they do to throw you off, but they steal your information first. So now they steal your information, and then even if you have your information backed up, they threaten to release it on the dark web. You don't even need to do ransomware anymore, okay? Because now what we see is people are paying. And I got bad news for you. Everybody's paying.
Yep.
So it's a business decision. That's why we need to flip the switch, and, we have to do what you guys are recommending on preventing ransomware. That's right. What the story should be.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, third truth, the cybersecurity. Putting these bad guys in jail is really, really hard. Because I know you might find this hard to believe with everything going on in the world. The Russian government and the Chinese government really are not cooperating with us. You find that hard to believe or what?
No, I may have picked up on that.
Yeah, so it is. And even though the FBI and the Secret Service do a great job. So what have we covered so far? We covered the cybercrime problem's getting worse. We keep spending more money. Bad guys steal your stuff. You contact law enforcement. They're not getting it back. That was my whole career. And putting bad guys in jail is really, really hard. So now you're probably going, the heck did we have you come on this podcast for? You're giving everyone a downer. But what do you think about that? When I'm talking at conferences, because remember, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to change behavior.
Yeah, I think everything that you said was accurate, Scott. I think the reality of it is that we see a significant difference in an organization that's gone through an event before, gone through a breach, gone through a situation before that was meaningful, and they changed their behavior and their mindset. And I think the challenge that we have as an industry is that we're not being proactive and preventive unless we've been at an organization that's had this event, or a direct friend, or we've seen something in our communities to really change the behavior. And we have such a limited amount of capital in healthcare, right? We operate on grocery store margins.
Of course.
Every dollar we move to cyber is away from the bedside. So we're always fighting for dollars. And what we find is, to your point about thinking differently, is every year you kind of add a new tool. Like, that's been the strategy, right? Every year I get a little bit more budget, I add a new tool. And what we see is the tools aren't working in concert. There's no operations around it, right? There's no people in process. It's not part of a program. We end up halfway using the tools. You've got this CISO turning over all the time, right? And so they bring in their new tools, and it's
their new friends, and their new vendors, and everything like that.
That's exactly right. But then when we get involved and we start seeing, they're not even executing the fundamentals.
And that's the fourth truth to cybersecurity, is that almost 90% of what I dealt with easily could have been prevented if my end users were armed with a couple of key pieces of information. And I'm oversimplifying the problem, but what I've learned during my career is I got to change your behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to sit here and be able to go like this to you, and I can do this in a couple of minutes, because everything I talk about is just taking things that are here and not putting it in front of you all the time. So what did they not have in common? So this is what I do. I get out, and this is how I build training programs out for organizations. Because if I could disguise it, and I can teach you how to avoid becoming an identity theft victim and keeping your kids safe and your senior parents safe. If I can wrap that into one, I can safeguard you in the organization. You want it to fail? Just say, hey, we're going to have Scott Augenbaum, retired FBI agent, come talk to you about information security. Everyone's going to be on their phone. Nobody's going to care. But when I start going into this, I can build an entire talk track around the victims in my subdivision that are within 20 houses in each direction. You have to make it personal. That's why I coined the phrase, the cybersecure mindset. And people go like this to me, well, I have my once a year cybersecurity awareness training, and we do phishing emails. And I'm like, there's no why to it. like, why? Why do I need to do this? Because they go back to point number one, it's never going to happen to me. So let me go through the thing, because I know that if I could have went back in time, sat with the victim, I could have prevented 90% of things from happening. So what's the first thing that none of my victims had in common? And I'm going to throw in one over here for everyone to do to safeguard themselves and their family and their parents. Freeze your credit. Okay, number one thing we need to do, I don't care if you are the CEO of a hospital or you are an orderly, everyone needs to freeze their credit. There's 15 million identity theft victims a year. Put the oxygen mask on yourself, do that first, or you are going to become a victim. But Scott, I don't want to do it. Okay, you're not getting your stuff back and nobody's going to jail and it could have been prevented. That's it. That's the loop that I have to get people going to. The other thing is, none of my victims embraced two-factor authentication. They didn't have it. And even when they break it down and it takes 3 years to put it on their email, nobody's identified the other accounts within the organization that need to have it. How many healthcare companies have outsourced payroll? What do you think?
Oh my gosh, I bet a bunch.
Yeah. How many of them do you think have an administrator working from home who doesn't have two-factor authentication on that platform?
Probably more than they'd want to admit.
Okay. And how many of those people who are working from home, because I've dealt with a situation just recently where the organization suffered a huge data breach because somebody was working from home and they came in and they're like, well, this was a very, very sophisticated threat attacker who compromised the router. I'm like, no, they didn't. That takes skill. That person had their AT&T Wi-Fi account. They didn't secure it with two-factor authentication. Bad guy got into the home router just because they didn't click two-factor authentication, and from there they were able to move laterally through the home network and be able to install a keylogger that stole the login credentials. Then we have people who aren't doing it on their cell phones. Just think about all these things. In the old days, we used to call it shadow IT. Today, I call it the cloud. It's unsecured cloud accounts. And I'm telling you, I sit with organizations. Nobody in the organization knows what the sales team has. Nobody knows. And that's normal because these are IT things. Think about it on the marketing side. What happens when the cyber criminals get access? I'll give you a funny story. I was just on the news today. I was on Newsmax. Somebody got into Elmo's X account. And because I'm sure whoever ran Elmo's X account said, what's the worst thing that could happen, right?
Yeah.
Well, they just sent them an email out to 3 million followers saying, hey, they hate the Jews and death to Israel. What's the worst thing that could happen to you? Now they have to go back and figure that out. And then I made another point, and I'm talking to the news reporter. I feel like I'm on Saturday Night Live. I'm trying not to laugh. But think about Elmo. And, the joke was, should Elmo have an X account? But think about that. 66% of the population's using the same password for multiple platforms.
Yep.
These are the examples that we have to use. Now, if I can convince you and your family why you need to secure your Gmail account and all these accounts because you'll be destroyed, then you'll understand why you need to do it at work. And I sit down with companies and nobody's thinking about this, but they're checking all the right boxes. They're checking the boxes for their cyber liability insurance, but they're not doing that. And the other thing, and lastly, is not understanding how social engineering is the number one threat to organizations. And social engineering, when I sit down and I'm like, are you talking about the 9 to 10 different types of social engineering outside of email? People look at me confused. And it's not rocket science, but it's how do I get people to understand this, to have that conversation?
Yeah. And have you seen people, as you give these speeches, open up to this concept and this idea and actually change their behavior and start thinking about it differently? Or Do they just say, hey, that's really interesting, Scott, I'm going to revert back to my normal tools?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's been the most frustrating thing since I've retired. I have no shortage of clients. I have no shortage of speaking gigs. But when someone goes like this, if you ask me honestly, Scott, do you think you've changed an organization's culture? I go, no. I keep a lot of people safe because my goal is to keep people safe. And these are the conversations that I'm having with companies going, what are you doing to teach your employees how not to become a cybercrime victim, how not to become an identity theft victim? And I'm not sitting here pitching a product, because having a product is great, but you have to have that mindset. So I get calls all the time from victims on LinkedIn, and I'm like, I could have prevented it. And then I get calls from people who hear me speak going, thank you. I've implemented this into my house, into my life. And then I go like this to my wife. I go, I just got hired by a Fortune 500 company to do an hour presentation. They paid me a fortune, but I offered to throw in a webinar on how to keep their kids safe and their senior parents safe. And they turned me down. And then my wife goes like this to me. She goes, Scott, you're not in the government anymore. You're supposed to make a lot of money to do a little. But this is what I love to do.
Yeah. So why would they turn that down? Because they don't see the connection between the impact that could have on the actual company?
I get hired, because just think about it. Let's look at I get brought in by a company. And the company goes like this. I had this with a very, very large insurance company, 50,000 employees. I did a live thing, paid me a fortune. I go, let me do something for you. Security awareness manager and the CISO, good friends of mine, they're like, Scott, we got so much stuff to do. You know how much work's involved with coordinating this? And I'm like, all right. You know what I mean? And a lot of times when I even do conferences and stuff, I even offer to do a follow-up webinar 6 months down the road for everyone. And very few people ever take me up on it.
Wow.
And that's the thing that frustrates me a lot. So I love what I do. I help people individually. And what a company's made up of?
People.
And if I can help people, that's the main goal.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it comes with the fact that, hey, Scott, we have a requirement in order to save 15% on our insurance. We need to do a 30-minute live talk. I'm like, okay, can't turn that down right there.
Yeah. 30-minute talk's easy for you to do.
Yeah.
I want to double click on one thing you mentioned. So we talk about the bad guys are hard to catch. Mm-hmm. Talk to us a little bit about why that is so difficult to catch it.
Yeah, because when I was a young FBI agent, if you had asked me to define my role in 95, it was easy. Bad people did bad things to good people. I worked with state and local cops, and we put bad guys in jail. So when the bad guy was in San Francisco and he was hurting people in the Northern District of New York, I contacted my FBI agent in San Francisco. He covered the lead. He did the drive-by. But now, with the way the internet is set up, we're dealing with people all over the world who are preying on us on their cell phones in foreign countries. So as I said earlier, these bad guys now, cybercrime is tied to financially motivated transnational threat actors. And in the old days, when I was with the FBI, we looked at cybercrime differently. We looked at nation states and we looked at transnational criminal enterprises. Today, it's merged. And what happens? They have the best tools. They have the ability. They have the patience. And now with millions and billions of usernames and passwords on the dark web, because we had AT&T had a breach.
Yeah.
We had Change Healthcare had a breach. And I tell people, hey, as long as you didn't order prescriptions, you have nothing to worry about. You know, these are why we need to have this is why we need to freeze out credit. This is why we can't use the same password, because what happens is when we do these investigations, we realize the bad guys are overseas. Have you heard of a term called pig butchering?
No, I've not.
Pig butchering is a cryptocurrency romance scam, and it's been impacting individuals, and it's social engineering. They're tricking people into falling for socially engineered scams. Like if you get one of those text messages that says, hello, is this Betty?
Yeah.
Or if you get a click on LinkedIn from somebody, what'll happen is they're going to talk to you. It's going to be an Asian female. They're preying after people my age in their mid-50s and early 70s. I had a victim here locally who got taken for $600,000, his whole entire investment account, because they socially engineered him through LinkedIn. They told him to talk on WhatsApp. Why? Because the bad guys are outside of the country, and they got him to invest in cryptocurrency. Now you have to go, I'm not investing in cryptocurrency. They had this guy download an app from the App Store, which was a simulated trading app. So he went to the Apple Store, he figured, hey, it must be legitimate, downloads the app. They say, hey, you have $10,000 of funny money. We're going to show you how to trade crypto. And overnight, it turns into $70,000. The $70,000 turns into $200,000. All the bad guy's doing is plugging in the numbers here.
Right.
And they say to him, would you like to invest $150? What do you think what do you think the victim says?
Sure, it's going up.
And he keeps going up and going up and going up. And then at the end of the day, he's out his life savings. I lost a lot of sleep on that one. I contacted my buddies with the FBI. I'm like, can somebody talk to him? When I was with the FBI, I was dealing with 5 victims a week in 2018. Today, they're dealing with 100 a week.
Wow.
They couldn't even talk to him. I was really upset about this because if I could have got with him, that's why I talk about pig butchering at every conference, because people need to realize this. That really bothered me for a while. It doesn't bother me anymore because I met the $6 million victim who had everything was taken from him. I had to convince him that he was a victim. And these bad people who are doing this are over in the Southeast Asia, in a very lawless region of the world where law enforcement can't get to them. That's why we can't get people's money back.
It's a tragedy. It's like those back in the day before the internet, like the mail scams targeted at the elderly people. Mm-hmm. Donate for this, do this. You know, they used to write checks and they get scammed in the mail. And it's just exponentially.
And it's good because everyone now, and I've just built a program for a large assisted living company in San Francisco because they're doing everything right. Nobody is hacking into their system and stealing their data. They're doing their IR plans. They got great tools. They're compliant. They got good strategic advisors. So what are the bad guys doing? Going after the residents.
Yeah.
And they're not doing anything for the residents because their security awareness training program is enterprise level.
Yep.
Doesn't have the ability to get to the individuals. And if it does, they don't really need to know about, it's completely different. So I'm building out talk tracks for them, because that's part of my goal is to try to keep 1 million people safe for the next 5 years.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. Put a dent in it, but we got a long way to go. When you think about the mindset shift, Scott, is it fair to say that stop thinking about it if you're an enterprise, you're a business, you're a health system, you're a healthcare organization, at the health system level, think about it at the individual level, and if we can change the behavior and the impacts personally for those individuals about protecting their kids, protecting themselves, protecting their parents, that will translate into better protection for the organization?
I believe 100%.
Yeah.
Because that is really what I've been doing for decades. It was what I was doing when I was with the FBI is through storytelling.
Yep.
And trying to put you into the position of what are you doing to keep your family safe. Now, for me, it's always, and this has been the thing when I was with the FBI, who's the right person to talk to about this? Mm-hmm. Because, our information security professionals, they're dying. They got so much to do. Yeah. Nobody's going over and looking at it at that level. So I've been trying to do it more as cybersecurity as a benefit or as a service for an organization to try to change the culture of the organization. And one of the things I learned is I can only help those who swim towards me.
Yeah.
That's the great thing about being retired. I do what I love to do. And, every once in a while, like I'll read about something in the news and I'll go like this, wow, can't believe it took that long for them because they had great tools in place, but they didn't have the right mindset. And you alluded to it earlier. We have changing C-suites.
Yeah.
How long does someone stay at one organization?
Not very long.
And what do you want to do? Keep costs down. I've seen that in so many healthcare organizations here, and I've seen a lot of large healthcare organizations suffer as a result, because I know for a fact that it's 5 to 10 years later, and they're no better when they were before. And the CISO who was there, not the CISO, the CFO, you're 3 CFOs later.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you had a recommendation to the C-suite, CEOs, CFOs, as it relates to cyber, what would you tell them?
I would explain to them that we have a cybercrime problem that is getting worse year after year. We keep spending money, but are we doing the right things? If a majority of the victimizations that I've dealt with are because of human error, somebody getting tricked to click on a link, somebody getting tricked to send sensitive information. And then if the other 10% is, what you guys are doing, which is, important, telling people to segment the networks, telling people, to look at your outbound traffic. I don't even get to those conversations with those people, because they're like, hey, we don't even have we're struggling to get 2-factor authentication, on our email system. And my advice when I talk to those people is, best of luck to you.
Yeah.
Best of luck to you.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you're talking to somebody like that, do you ever ask them why they're not doing that? Like, do they know that they should be doing it and they're not doing it?
Everybody knows what they should be doing.
Yeah.
What I'm talking about isn't rocket science. Mm-hmm. It's like we all know, I'm retired now. I try to get to the gym all the time because I know I can't reduce my stomach so I can get my upper body larger. I know what I need to do, but who has the time? We got kids, we got stress, we got pressure. So unfortunately, and with the way the economy is we're doing so much more with so much less.
Yeah.
And everyone I'm talking to doesn't have the bandwidth.
Yeah.
They're like, well, how do we deliver this? How do we get this to our employees? And, and sometimes they just believe, and it's been working for me. I haven't had to get a real job in 7.5 years. I go out, I just got hired to do an association, in Tampa, Florida in October, for 450 people. And I just go, this will be great. Everyone's going to get excited. But, 3 days later, everyone's going to forget what I tell them to do. And then I get high, so that's the problem that we keep having. And as long, to me, I put out content on LinkedIn I try to do videos. Sometimes I get bad. Sometimes I'll do 3 in a row. I'm on the news all the time. I try to give everybody the content that they need. So if you can't afford, if your company doesn't bring me in, I just go go to my YouTube channel. Everything is there for you.
Yeah. Why do you think this hasn't garnered more national media attention? You've talked about the news, and I know that you're on it often. Why is it not a bigger conversation in the U.S.?
In 2014, and I hate to talk about the big breach here in Nashville, I thought that was the game changer. Because we're coming off of the Target breach in 2013. We're coming off major attacks by the Chinese government into healthcare in 2014. We had the Blue Cross Blue Shield. We had the Anthem. Then we start seeing the Iranian government start targeting universities. Then we start seeing the introduction of ransomware. The Russian organized crime is getting into NASDAQ. We have Home Depot. We have Marriott. And that was 8 years ago. That was 8 years ago. I mean, we don't have that long attention span as we did, because it always goes back to my first truth of cybersecurity. It's not going to happen to me.
Yeah.
Why would it happen to me? So that's why I got to make it personal. That's why I have to sit here. And it is many people will use fear. I'm like, it's not fear. You don't have to do it. Listen, don't buy. I'm not talking about buying a product. I'm talking about, instead of going out and buying the exercise system, just do the push-ups. Who wants to do push-ups?
Yeah, but it's easier. Late night TV, you just buy. I've got every exercise gadget known to man, Scott. It's like
we're all that way. I'm not any better. It's hard to throw stones at people to tell them. We all have so many things to do. Like, one of my biggest frustrations was when I was with the FBI, and I went out and I told every school system in Williamson County, if you needed me, I will go there and do a great presentation for parents. First of all, very few people ever took me up on that offer. And when I did, sometimes we'd get 10 parents. And instead of getting frustrated, I went like this. I helped 10 people today. So it's just like, all right, everybody's busy.
Yeah, it's wild. And do you think that we've gotten any better over this last 7 years you've been doing this? Like, do you feel like the message is beginning to resonate with more and more people, or no?
Nah, because instead of companies are going out and companies are buying more tools. So it's a little harder to get to the company. So what do? You go after the end users. That's why we're seeing such an increase in numbers that are happening to regular people like us.
Yep.
And a majority of my victims all work for big healthcare companies. They all worked for the Nissans, the Bridgestones, they worked for big companies. So they're not going after as much that side, and it's a very low cost to entry.
Yeah.
And we didn't even touch on artificial intelligence.
Yeah, well, that was where I wanted to go next. So thanks for that segue. So how is that going to change the game?
It's going to make it so much more difficult.
Yeah.
And before we start talking about how AI is going to help the problem, right now with artificial intelligence, go to any company, scan the website, go to LinkedIn, find all the employees that are there, and then you can start targeting them with really good messages. And now remember, there's so much information on the dark web that it's so easy for somebody to go over and to really, I always joke, I said remember the old days you could always tell the scammers because of the bad grammar?
Yeah.
Today, the only one, I go like this, if they're using proper semicolons, then it's a cyber criminal because
no one does that.
Yeah, because nobody does that.
Yeah. Well, it's fascinating. So like at Fortified, when someone joins Fortified and changes their LinkedIn profile, within like 2 hours, they get a text message from somebody like me.
Yeah.
And it used to say, they used to sign it, Dan L. Dotson. Well, no one signs text messages. So that was obvious, right? And I go by Dan L. So they found out that that's how I sign, because there's other Dan Dotsons out there. And they use that. And so that was an easy one not to get tricked by, because no one signs text messages. Well, that's gone away. Last month, maybe 2 months ago, we had an associate join Fortified, change their LinkedIn, and within 2 hours, their spouse got a text message. So now the bad guys had figured out that they joined Fortified, I was the CEO, and this was your wife, and I targeted your wife. That is incredible, Scott. And I mean...
Yeah. And there's so much stuff that, how do you even figure that out? And then, so what happens when, you hire your new kids right out of college who, don't really know any better, and all of a sudden the kid comes over and shows up and goes to your office manager with a receipt for $1,000 because they bought gift cards because you asked them to get gift cards.
Yeah.
Are we, so what do we got to do? Write another policy? Like, we will not buy gift cards for Dan.
Yeah. It's crazy. It is absolutely nuts.
And it's not getting better in that situation because we're not teaching this in school.
Yeah.
We're not even teaching budgeting at school. I don't want to go on that subject, about putting money away. It's just that whose responsibility is it? And when I was with the FBI for years, I would get crap from my boss who would tell me, we're not the Federal Bureau of Education. We're the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And that's what agents want to do. They want to investigate.
Yeah.
That's why I left, and the day I was eligible to retire, and I lived with passion project life.
Yeah.
Just trying to get my message to as many people as humanly possible.
You bring up a great point. Do you think cyber should be a part of the education system?
I guess there's so many different things. I guess we should be talking about nutrition, but we can't even agree on what kind of math and what kind of history to teach kids. How is this?
Yeah. There's no home ec anymore. There's no personal finance classes anymore, at scale. I'm sure there's pockets that are doing it, but I mean, it's
just, and that's why, kids know more about technology than our parents. And as we talked about Moore's Law, everyone has technology these days.
Yeah.
Everybody has some kind of piece of personal tech, either through a gaming platform, and it's having these discussions with kids because now we're dealing with sextortion. So, and these are the things that it's like, how do you, as I build out customized content for organizations, I started building out customized content for the senior living facility. I came up with 50 different scams on social engineering. And I'm sure tomorrow the next one's going to be, it's the pizza delivery scam. It's like you have to teach people what is social engineering, not what is phishing.
Yeah.
Because you know what? And none of the who's really talking about exactly like what you said. I was brought into a large insurance company in New York who wanted customized training because their cybersecurity awareness platform didn't talk about the scam that you just talked about.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and that's where I come in because, when the retired FBI agent's telling a story, people will listen.
What I love your point is that we're not going to be able to keep up with every one of these scenarios because the adversaries keep changing it. They keep evolving their tactics, how they're utilizing it. They're going to get better with AI. But if we start thinking about the mindset and educating these people on how to do that, then we don't have to necessarily try to chase or put a policy in place for every one of these independent use cases. We can get people to think differently about how to protect themselves. And hopefully that translates into more protection for healthcare.
I don't know. Maybe it'll work. I'll give you a perfect example. A lot of times when I'm going out and I am doing a presentation, and I'll make the same offer. I wrote a book called The Secret to Cybersecurity. I'm going to give everyone here who listens to the podcast, if they got this far, they can shoot me an email and I will send them the audio copy of my book, The Secret to Cybersecurity. A simple plan to protect your family and business, where I've made it a really simple plan. So I give away more of these. I have it on a platform called Thinkific. So, when I'm doing engagements for large organizations, I'll go like this. Yeah, I'll throw in 1,000 books. You know what I mean? They love it. On a good day, maybe 10% of the audience at a live event will ever take me up on the opportunity to do this. 10%. And I'm like, and even the ones who do take me up, they don't listen to it.
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
All right, at least I'm making a good living. We went to Italy as a result of it. So It's like you can only do so much. And the reason, I do what I do is I didn't feel like I can do enough when I was with the FBI.
Yeah.
And if I can, so instead of getting frustrated because I had a conference and they bought 200 books and only 10 people took me up on the books and 5 people read it, I helped 5 people.
Yeah.
It's better than nothing.
Yeah, no doubt. I've read your book. It's fascinating. It's great. Very informative. What lasting impact besides change your mindset do you have for the viewers today, Scott?
It just takes a little bit of work. Instead of fear, it's really just empowerment. If 90%, because this is the loop that I have to get people to believe. The problem's going up. The bad guys steal your stuff. You're not getting it back. Law enforcement has a very difficult time of putting people in jail, but most of this stuff could be prevented. And we're talking about the stuff that you're going to take back with you at home as an executive or as a healthcare employee within your organization. And that's why I appreciate you bringing me on today to share this with your listeners, because you care about people, and that's why we have a great relationship here.
Yeah, absolutely. So lastly, where can people find your information? Where's the best way to follow you? And
I would hit me up on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn, Scott Augenbaum. Connect with me. Tell me you heard me here today, and I will send you the audio copy of my book, or I will put my email in the show notes.
Okay.
And just thank you, Dan.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm Dan Dotson, and this was Cyber Survivor.